The wedding bells had barely stopped ringing when they started talking. "He's a millionaire, she's a waitress with 3 kids. How long do you think it'll last?" It was the kind of conversation that had followed every major decision in his life. No one ever thought anything he did was good enough. And no one believed in the woman he had chosen to marry. Jason Wells had built his empire from the ground up. He wasn't some trust fund kid with a silver spoon in his mouth. He had worked in kitchens, worked on construction sites, and hustled every day of his life just to make ends meet. But no one cared about his story. They only saw the polished exterior, the sleek suits, the fast cars, and the shiny glass towers that bore his name. People saw a millionaire who could have any woman he wanted, and they couldn't understand why he had chosen someone like Ava. Ava Malone had lived her own kind of hard life. A waitress in a small, run-down diner, she had 3 kids from a previous marriage that had ended in bitterness and regret. She wasn't glamorous. She didn't have the looks of some high-society woman. She didn't even have much money to her name. What she had was a quiet strength, a kind of resilience that Jason admired from the moment he met her. She wasn't interested in his wealth, and she never cared for his status. All she wanted was to find a man who would love her and her kids for who they were. But no one seemed to care about that part of the story. They only cared about the odds. It seemed impossible. She was just a waitress, after all, and he was Jason Wells, a name that commanded respect, money, and influence. And so, they whispered. Behind closed doors, at dinner parties, in the hallways of the high-end hotels Jason frequented, the whispers had started almost immediately. It wasn't long before the bet began to circulate, among his closest friends and enemies alike. "She'll never last," they said. "Give it 6 months. Maybe a year, at most. He's too rich, and she's too ordinary." They laughed about it, made jokes at his expense, assuming Ava was just another woman looking for a payout. They didn't understand. No one did. And that was exactly how Jason liked it. The reception had been beautiful. Ava, in a simple, elegant white dress, had looked like an angel when she walked down the aisle. Jason, for the first time in years, felt like a man who had finally found something real. The clinking of champagne glasses, the laughter of friends, and the soft music playing in the background made it feel like everything was perfect. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where they could build a life together. But in the back of his mind, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't just the whispers of the people around him. There was something else, a nagging doubt that gnawed at him in the quiet moments before he fell asleep. He had spent most of his life controlling every aspect of his world. But Ava was different. She didn't play by the same rules. She didn't care about his money or his status. She didn't care about what anyone thought of her. And that terrified him. On their honeymoon, they had traveled to a secluded cabin in the mountains, far away from the glitz and glamour of his usual life. They spent their days hiking through the forest, cooking simple meals together, and talking for hours under the stars. There, in the quiet of nature, Jason found something he hadn't realized he was missing, a sense of peace. Ava's laugh, her carefree smile, the way she looked at him with such warmth, made him believe that maybe, just maybe, the whispers didn't matter. But when they returned home, everything changed. 2 weeks after their honeymoon, it happened. The phone call. Jason had been in his office, reviewing some financial statements, when his cell rang. The number was unfamiliar, but he picked up anyway. It was a woman's voice on the other end. Cold, sharp, and urgent. "Mr. Wells, I need to talk to you about something. Something important. It's about your wife." His heart dropped. He had never heard the voice before, and the words themselves sent a chill down his spine. He could hear the hint of something in her tone, something desperate, something that made him instinctively reach for the edge of his desk. "What about my wife?" he asked, his voice steady, though his mind was already racing with possibilities. "It's not what you think. There's a lot you don't know about her." The voice paused, and Jason could hear the woman take a deep breath. "You need to meet me, Mr. Wells. I'll explain everything. This isn't what it seems." His first instinct was to hang up. To ignore it. After all, who could this woman be? But something in her voice told him that he couldn't ignore it. "Where?" he asked. There was a brief silence before she spoke again, her voice lower now. "Meet me at the old diner on 5th Street. Midnight." The line went dead. Jason sat there for a moment, the weight of the conversation sinking in. Who could this woman be? And what did she mean by, "There's a lot you don't know about her"? Ava had always been honest with him. She had never given him any reason to question her, but now, after that call, doubt began to creep into his mind. Was she hiding something from him? Or was someone else trying to tear them apart? He didn't know what to believe, but one thing was certain: something was wrong, and he had to find out what it was. The clock ticked on, the hands slowly making their way toward midnight. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited him at that old diner would change everything. And so, with a sense of unease settling in his chest, Jason made a decision that would alter the course of his life, and his marriage, forever. The streets were empty when Jason arrived at the old diner. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the dimly lit surroundings. It was a far cry from the busy streets he usually walked. The ones filled with bustling people, neon signs, and the hum of city life. Here, in the quiet darkness of the night, it felt almost eerie. The diner sat there, its neon sign flickering faintly, its windows dusty and cracked as if time had forgotten it. Jason's pulse quickened. He glanced at his watch. It was almost midnight. The woman had said, "Meet me at midnight," and he had arrived exactly on time. But now that he was here, standing outside, he wondered if he was making a mistake. He had no idea who she was, or what she wanted. But the way her voice had trembled with urgency on the phone, it had sounded so genuine, so full of fear, that he couldn't ignore it. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves, and walked toward the diner's entrance. The door creaked when he opened it, a low groan that echoed through the empty space inside. The place looked abandoned, save for a single light hanging over a small booth in the corner. A figure sat there, her face obscured by the shadows. Jason hesitated for a moment before taking a seat across from her. She hadn't said a word. Just sat there, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. He waited, his heart hammering in his chest. He had questions, so many questions. But instead of speaking, he watched her closely, studying her. She wasn't much older than him. Her dark hair was tied back into a messy bun, and she wore a simple coat, too big for her frame, as if she had thrown it on in a hurry. Her eyes, though, were what grabbed his attention. They were wide, terrified, and they seemed to look through him, like she wasn't fully present. "You wanted to talk?" Jason finally asked, his voice rough with uncertainty. She nodded slowly, but didn't say anything. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table without a word. Jason took the paper and unfolded it. His eyes scanned the contents quickly, his stomach sinking with each word. It was a photograph, grainy and black and white. But that wasn't what made Jason's blood run cold. It was the figure in the photo. It was Ava. But this wasn't the Ava Jason knew. The woman in the photograph stood in front of a house, one that Jason didn't recognize. Her posture was rigid, almost defensive. Her expression was hard, like she was hiding something. But what shocked him the most was the man standing beside her. A man Jason didn't recognize. He looked older, rugged. His face was covered in a thick beard, his eyes filled with a kind of coldness that sent a shiver down Jason's spine. Jason's hand tightened around the photograph, and he looked up at the woman across from him. His voice trembled. What is this? Who is this man? The woman finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. His name is Jack. He's someone from her past. Jason's mind raced. Ava had never mentioned a man named Jack. He had never heard her talk about anyone who looked like this. She had always told him everything. Hadn't she? I don't understand, Jason said, his voice low, a sense of dread building in his chest. What do you mean, from her past? The woman hesitated, her eyes darting around as if she was afraid someone might overhear. I don't know all the details, Mr. Wells, but what I do know is that your wife, Ava, she's hiding something. And it's big. This man, Jack, he's dangerous. He's been looking for her. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Looking for her? Why? The woman lowered her voice even further. Because of something she did. Something she's been running from for years. She doesn't want you to know about it, and she certainly doesn't want you to find out the truth. But you need to know. If you don't, everything you've built together, it could all come crashing down. Jason felt the room close in around him. His chest tightened, and his palms grew clammy. I don't believe you. I don't know who you are, or what game you're playing, but I know Ava. She's not hiding anything from me. She's not some criminal. The woman leaned forward, her eyes filled with desperation. I wish that were true. But this isn't about what you want to believe. It's about what's real. Ava's past is more complicated than you could ever imagine, and if you don't uncover the truth, it could cost you everything, your money, your reputation, and your life. Jason's head spun. His hands shook as he stared at the woman, who was now looking at him with a mixture of fear and regret. He wanted to yell at her, to tell her that this was all a lie, but something in her expression stopped him. She wasn't making this up. She wasn't playing some sick game. But why? Why was Ava involved with someone like this? Why are you telling me this? Jason asked, his voice hoarse. What do you want from me? The woman hesitated before responding, her voice quiet but firm. Because you need to know who you're really married to. And because Jack's not the only one looking for her. There are others, people even more dangerous than him. If you don't find out what happened, it will destroy you both. Jason stared at her, his mind a blur of confusion and fear. The room felt like it was closing in on him, the silence between them thick with unsaid words. He didn't know what to believe anymore. Ava had always been so open with him, so honest. This woman across from him, had to be lying. But the fear in her eyes, the urgency in her voice, it didn't seem fake. I need answers, Jason said, his voice firm now, though his insides were churning with doubt. What happened between them? What did Ava do? The woman's gaze shifted to the window, as though she was weighing whether or not to continue. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. Your wife didn't just leave her past behind, Mr. Wells, she said, her voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and fear. She ran from it. And when she did, she made someone very dangerous very angry. Jason leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Who? The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked over her shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. Then, in a whisper, she said the words that would change everything. His name is Victor Hayes. And if he finds her, if he finds out what she's done, no one will be safe. Jason's world seemed to tilt on its axis. The name felt like a punch to his gut, but he couldn't place it. Victor Hayes. I've never heard of him. You will, the woman said, her voice ominous. Trust me, you will. The next few days felt like a blur. Jason couldn't shake the image of the photograph, nor the woman's words. Victor Hayes. That name kept echoing in his mind, twisting into the labyrinth of his thoughts. He had never heard of him before, but something about the way the woman had said it, the way her eyes had widened with fear, it was clear that Victor Hayes was someone important. Someone dangerous. He couldn't go to the police. Not yet. There was still too much he didn't understand. If Ava was hiding something from him, if there was something about her past that she had never shared, what would he even say to the authorities? They would want answers, answers that he didn't have. Jason had tried to talk to Ava about it. He had, countless times. But she had become distant, avoiding the subject each time it came up. It was as if she already knew the questions he was about to ask, and she didn't want to answer them. The warmth in her smile, the light in her eyes, things that had once made him feel safe, were gone, replaced by an eerie silence. It was like the woman he married had suddenly become a stranger. A stranger he was married to. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder as Jason sat at his desk, staring at his phone. He had made the decision to do what he should have done from the start, dig into Ava's past himself. He needed answers, and he couldn't wait any longer. Picking up his phone, he made a call he had been putting off for days. "Hello," came the voice on the other end. "Hey, it's Jason Wells. I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Of course, Mr. Wells. What's going on?" "I need information," Jason replied, his tone firm. "I need everything you can find on a man named Victor Hayes. And I need it now." The line was silent for a beat. "Victor Hayes," the voice repeated. "I'll get on it right away, but I need to tell you, that name is dangerous." "Are you sure about this?" Jason's pulse quickened. "Just get the information. Now." The voice hesitated again. "Okay, but you need to be careful. I'll send over whatever I find as soon as I can." With that, Jason hung up, his mind racing. It was no secret that his connections had their limits, but with a name like Victor Hayes, he knew it wouldn't take long for someone to track down information. Whoever this man was, he was tied to something much larger than Jason had ever anticipated. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The sound of his thoughts filled the room, each one a jagged piece of the puzzle he was trying to solve. And no matter how hard he tried, the pieces didn't fit. The more he uncovered about Ava's past, the more uncertain everything became. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the vibration of his phone. He grabbed it quickly, feeling a surge of adrenaline. A message appeared on the screen, an encrypted email from his contact. He clicked it open. Victor Hayes, a profile. Victor Hayes, born in 1976, was a notorious figure in the criminal underworld. A former army officer turned mercenary, Hayes quickly gained a reputation for his ruthless tactics, leading covert operations that spanned multiple continents. Known for his cold, calculating demeanor and unwavering loyalty to whoever paid him, Hayes worked for various governments and private organizations, always in the shadows. By the time he was in his late 30s, he had built a network of powerful allies, some of whom remained anonymous to this day. His most well-known operation was a series of covert missions in South America, where he was responsible for both defending and attacking various cartel territories. His reputation in that part of the world was legendary. But it wasn't just his military connections that made him a dangerous man. Hayes had a history of taking extreme measures to protect his interests, including blackmail, kidnapping, and even murder. He disappeared from the radar for a few years but resurfaced under different aliases, and recently, there had been whispers of his return. No one knew exactly where he was now, but it was clear that he had ties to both old and new organizations that were as dangerous as they were powerful. Jason read the email twice, his hands trembling as the weight of the information settled on his shoulders. Hayes wasn't just some thug from the street. He was a former soldier, a mercenary with a dark past, and possibly the very thing that was threatening to tear his life apart. But there was something else in the report that caught Jason's attention. The report mentioned a name, a woman who had been part of one of Hayes's operations. A woman who, according to the file, had disappeared shortly after the operation had gone wrong. The name sent a jolt of recognition through Jason's chest. Ava Malone. Jason's stomach churned. How could this be? How could Ava have been involved with someone like Victor Hayes? Was she really a part of this world? Was this the secret she had been hiding all this time? There had to be a mistake. Jason clicked on the next file in the email. It was an old photograph, dated 5 years ago. The photo was blurry, but it was unmistakable. Ava stood next to Victor Hayes, both of them looking like they were in the middle of a mission. The background showed a war-torn building, and they were both dressed in combat gear. The truth hit Jason like a freight train. Ava had been lying to him. She had been living a double life, a life he knew nothing about. Jason's mind reeled, and he quickly dialed Ava's phone number, desperate for answers. He needed to hear her voice, needed to confront her. But the call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. And again. Nothing. A sickening feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. Ava was avoiding him, but that wasn't all. The more he thought about it, the more he realized she had been preparing for something. The distant behavior, the constant secrecy, it all pointed to one thing. Ava was running from something. And Jason was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. The next morning, Jason did what he had been avoiding for so long. He went through Ava's things. He started in her closet, looking through the clothes she'd left behind, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Her shoes, her coats, her dresses, all neatly arranged. But it was the drawer in her bedside table that caught his attention. He had never opened it before, never thought to. But now, with the fear that something was horribly wrong, he opened it. Inside, he found a stack of letters, old, yellowed pieces of paper, some of them written in a language he didn't recognize. They were signed by Victor Hayes, each one more cryptic than the last. Some mentioned missions, others spoke of threats, and one even referred to a deal they had made. But it wasn't until Jason reached the last letter that his breath caught in his throat. The letter was dated 2 weeks before their wedding. The letter was brief, but it made Jason's blood run cold. Ava. If you go through with this marriage, there will be consequences. You can't hide forever, and I will find you. You belong to me, and I don't take kindly to being ignored. I suggest you reconsider your choices, or I'll make them for you. Victor Hayes. Jason slammed the letter down on the table, his heart pounding in his chest. The words were clear, chilling. Victor Hayes had been in her life, and he was still pulling the strings. Ava hadn't escaped him after all. Jason's fingers trembled as he placed the final letter back in the drawer. The weight of Victor Hayes's words hung heavy in his mind. The finality of them. You belong to me, and I don't take kindly to being ignored. The sentence felt like a blade, slicing through everything Jason thought he knew about his wife. Ava wasn't just hiding something from him, she was hiding a whole life, a past filled with darkness and danger. And now, that past was threatening to catch up to her. Jason's mind raced as he paced around the room, his thoughts a chaotic storm. He had to confront Ava. He had to understand what was going on before it was too late. But Ava had been avoiding him. It was as if she was already preparing for something, retreating into herself as the storm of her past loomed larger by the minute. He reached for his phone again, feeling the urgency building inside him. But this time, as if fate had timed it perfectly, there was a new message waiting for him. The familiar name on the screen, his contact. Jason's heart skipped a beat as he opened the message. Victor Hayes, known associates and last known location. Jason. Here's what we were able to uncover. Hayes has ties to multiple organized crime syndicates, mostly international, operating in various parts of the world. He's been connected to arms deals, illegal military operations, and high-level kidnapping rings. But it's the people he's worked with that should concern you most. From what we can tell, Ava wasn't just some innocent bystander. She had direct involvement with him. At one point, she was more than just an accomplice, she was a partner. We don't have specifics yet, but the trail is pointing to a connection deeper than we first thought. Hayes was last seen in Mexico, operating under the alias Marco Diaz, but it's unclear whether he's still there. Be cautious. Whatever you're looking into, it's dangerous. Jason's stomach churned as he read the message, each word a reminder of how far his life had fallen into chaos. Ava hadn't just been a part of this world, she had been someone important in it. A partner, not just a pawn. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Mexico. The name of the place echoed in his mind. That was where Victor Hayes had been last seen. It wasn't a surprise, considering the dangerous history of organized crime in that part of the world. But it wasn't just the location that rattled him, it was the thought of Ava's involvement. How could she have been involved with a man like Hayes? Why hadn't she ever told him? Jason quickly typed a response to his contact. Do you have any more details on Ava's role? Where exactly did they meet? I need more information. I can't keep going without knowing what I'm dealing with. As he hit send, Jason's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. He picked up immediately. Jason, came the voice on the other end. It was his contact. We've dug deeper. I don't know if you're ready for this. Jason's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? What did you find? Ava, she wasn't just involved with Hayes. She was involved in his business. Arms deals, kidnappings, this isn't just some little mistake she made. It's serious. Jason's mind reeled. You're telling me that my wife was involved in illegal operations with him? His voice was rising, barely able to contain his disbelief and anger. There's more. We've confirmed that Ava was one of the people Hayes used to track and execute missions. She wasn't just a civilian caught up in something bigger. She was a key player. She knew exactly what she was doing. Jason's knees felt weak as he collapsed into the chair beside him. His wife, the woman he thought he knew, had been part of a world of violence and crime. The shock of it was almost too much to bear. This can't be true, Jason whispered, staring blankly at the wall. I'm afraid it is. There's no mistake. She's been living a double life. You need to confront her about this, Jason. But be careful, if Victor Hayes is still after her, you might be in danger too. The line went silent for a moment before the voice added, the deeper you dig, the more you're going to find. But some of these things are better left buried. Jason didn't respond. He couldn't. The truth was too raw, too painful. But he knew one thing for sure, he couldn't back away now. Not when he was so close to understanding what had really happened. The rest of the day was a blur. Jason couldn't focus on anything, his thoughts consumed by the discovery he had just made. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Ava standing with Victor Hayes in that photograph flashed before his eyes. She looked so different, tough, cold, almost unrecognizable. Had she really been involved in everything his contact had said? Had she been the one pulling the strings behind those illegal operations? Jason's mind kept racing, but he knew one thing for sure, he needed to find Ava. He couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get them. But when he arrived at their home that evening, things were already different. The house felt unnervingly silent. It was late, almost midnight, and Jason hadn't heard from Ava all day. He tried calling her again, but once more, the phone went straight to voicemail. He paced back and forth in the living room, his mind spinning. Where was she? Why hadn't she come home? And why did everything feel so wrong? Suddenly, he heard a noise. A door creaking open. He spun around quickly, his heart racing. Ava was standing in the doorway, her figure silhouetted by the faint glow of the porch light behind her. "Where were you?" Jason demanded, his voice trembling. "Why didn't you call? Why haven't you been answering your phone?" Ava's eyes were empty, distant. She stood there for a moment, frozen, before stepping into the room. Her face was pale, and there was a look of exhaustion in her eyes, as if she had been running, as if she hadn't slept in days. I was just out," Ava said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to wake you." Jason stared at her, his chest tightening with a mixture of fear and anger. "You didn't want to wake me?" "Ava, I know what's going on. I know about Victor Hayes." The words hit her like a slap in the face. Ava's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she seemed to lose all composure. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Jason took a step toward her, his voice rising. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think you could hide all of this from me? What the hell were you thinking, getting involved with someone like him?" Ava's face went pale, and she took a step back. "Jason, please. Let's talk about this. You don't understand." Jason shook his head, his anger now boiling over. "I don't understand. You were involved with a man like him. You're telling me you weren't?" "I wasn't the person you think I am," Ava said, her voice cracking. She sounded desperate. "I never wanted this life. I thought I could leave it all behind. I thought I could start over with you." Jason stepped back, his mind reeling. "But why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me enough to let me in?" Ava closed her eyes, tears beginning to form in the corners of her eyes. "Because I was trying to protect you. I wanted to protect us. If you knew the truth, you wouldn't want anything to do with me. And I couldn't let that happen." Jason stood there, speechless, as Ava collapsed onto the couch. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, and for the first time, Jason felt the weight of her pain. But it wasn't enough. He had to know everything. Jason stood in the living room, his fists clenched at his sides. The words Ava had just spoken were still ringing in his ears, louder than the thunderstorm that raged outside. He could see the fear in her eyes, the raw emotion on her face. She had never looked so vulnerable, so broken. But the anger and confusion that gnawed at his insides wouldn't let him reach out to her. "Not yet. I was trying to protect you." Jason's thoughts replayed her words over and over again. But how could she protect him by lying? By hiding this dark past? She had kept him in the dark, knowing the danger that followed her, and now it was clear that danger had come for them both. His heart was torn. A part of him wanted to wrap his arms around her, hold her, tell her that everything would be okay. But another part of him felt betrayed, furious that she had kept something this huge from him for so long. Ava looked at him, her eyes desperate for understanding, but Jason couldn't find the words. The room felt suffocating, the silence unbearable. "I need to know everything, Ava," he finally said, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper. "I need to know the truth. About Victor Hayes, about what you did. Everything." Ava's body stiffened at the mention of Hayes's name, but she nodded slowly, wiping the tears from her cheeks. I didn't know how to tell you. You wouldn't have believed me. You wouldn't have stayed with me if you knew." Jason took a step forward. "Try me." Ava exhaled deeply, her face contorted with the pain of what she had kept hidden for so long. She hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words to explain a past that was far darker than Jason could have ever imagined. "When I met Victor," she began, her voice trembling, "I was just trying to survive. I was young, too young to understand what I was getting into. I had nothing, Jason. I was living in a rundown apartment, working 2 jobs just to pay the rent. Then I met him. He was different. He was powerful, charming. He made me feel seen. And at first, I thought he was just another wealthy man looking for a fling. Jason clenched his jaw. So, you got involved with him? Ava nodded, her gaze falling to her lap. Yes. But it wasn't just about that. He was already deep into things I didn't understand at the time. He promised me a way out, a better life. He said he could make me someone important, someone who could have everything I'd ever wanted. I didn't realize the cost of that life until it was too late. Jason watched her, his mind trying to process the story she was telling. He had never imagined the woman he married had been swept up in the world of crime, of mercenaries and violence. He wanted to hate her, to feel betrayed, but the pain in her voice made it impossible to push her away. "What did he get you involved in?" he asked, his voice strained. Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with regret. At first, it was small stuff. Gathering intel, running errands. But then it escalated. He made me a part of his operations. I was the one he used to get close to powerful people, go to parties, dinners, make connections. And slowly, I became more involved. I learned about weapons deals, smuggling operations. I even did some other things that I'm not proud of. Jason's heart pounded as he absorbed her words. Every sentence she spoke seemed to shatter the illusion of the life they had built together. He had married a woman who had once been part of a world of violence and crime, and she hadn't just been an innocent bystander. She had been an active participant. And Victor? Jason asked, his voice cold, even though his insides were churning. What's his role in all of this? Ava's face darkened at the mention of his name. Victor he wasn't just a criminal, Jason. He was a leader. He built an empire on violence, manipulation, and fear. But what you don't know is that he's been under the radar for years. The people he worked with, they covered their tracks so well that no one could ever truly pin anything on him. Jason could feel his anger rising. And you were part of this empire? I didn't want to be, Ava said quickly, shaking her head. But when you get in that deep, it's hard to get out. I was in too far. Hayes knew how to manipulate people, how to make them feel like they had no choice. And when I tried to leave. She trailed off, as if the memory was too painful to speak aloud. Jason moved toward her, crouching down so they were eye level. What happened when you tried to leave? Ava's eyes flickered with fear. He threatened me. He said he would hurt the people I loved. He said I could either stay with him and work, or he would make me disappear. I thought I could escape. I thought I could leave it all behind when I came to you. But Victor doesn't let people go that easily. He still had ties to me, connections, information. He was always watching. Jason sat down beside her, feeling a surge of empathy for her pain, but also a deep sense of betrayal. But you never told me any of this, he whispered. You never trusted me enough to let me help you. Ava wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could protect you. I thought if I kept it all hidden, we could have a normal life, our life. But now, her voice faltered as she looked down at the floor, her shoulders shaking. Jason's mind was racing. He had known Ava for years. He had seen the gentle, caring woman who had raised 3 kids with him, who had been his partner in every sense of the word. But now, the woman sitting beside him was a stranger, a woman who had once been part of a world that Jason had never known, a world full of danger and deceit. As he stared at her, Jason realized that there was still so much more he didn't understand. He didn't know the full extent of her involvement with Victor Hayes or how deep this conspiracy went. But one thing was certain, Victor Hayes was still out there, still watching, and still pulling the strings. Ava, we need to do something, Jason said, his voice suddenly filled with determination. We can't just wait for him to come after us. I won't let him hurt you. Or us. Ava looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. Jason, no. You don't understand. If we go after him, if we make a move, he will come for us. He'll destroy everything. You don't know who you're dealing with. Jason clenched his fists. Then what do you want me to do? Just sit here and wait for him to make his move? No. I won't stand by while you're in danger. You've kept me in the dark long enough. It's time to face this head-on. Ava stood up quickly, her hands trembling. Jason, please. You don't understand. Victor Hayes isn't just some criminal. He's a force of nature. He has power, connections, resources. And if he finds out I've been talking about him, if he knows I'm still alive, he won't stop until we're both gone. Jason stood up, taking her hands in his. Then we'll fight him. Together. Ava looked at him, her face filled with fear and disbelief. Together? She repeated, as if the word itself was foreign to her. How can we fight him, Jason? How can we win? I don't know, Jason admitted, his voice low. But we'll find a way. We have to. The storm outside seemed to mirror the turmoil in Jason's chest. The thunder cracked, and the rain began to pour in sheets, battering the windows of their home. But Jason didn't care. The world outside could fall apart, but inside, he had made a decision. They were going to face Victor Hayes, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of action, fear, and planning. Jason and Ava had been forced into a corner, a place where every decision felt like it could be their last. But there was no turning back now. They had come this far together, and Jason wasn't about to let the man who had terrorized Ava's past destroy their future. They spent every waking moment gathering information, reaching out to people who might have answers, anyone who could give them a clue as to Victor Hayes' next move. But for every step forward, it seemed like they were taking 2 steps back. The more they uncovered, the darker the picture became. Victor Hayes was no ordinary criminal. He was a mastermind, a man who could move through the shadows without leaving a trace. His empire stretched far beyond anything Jason had imagined, its tendrils reaching into politics, business, and even law enforcement. And Ava, the woman he had married, had been entangled in it all. Jason had thought he knew everything about Ava, the way she laughed, the way she loved their children, the way she cared for him. But the woman he thought he knew was a stranger, a woman who had been running from her past for years. And now that past was catching up with them both. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between Jason and Ava grew. Ava was racked with guilt, haunted by the things she had done, the life she had led before she met Jason. She had spent so many years trying to outrun the monster that was Victor Hayes, but now it seemed like there was nowhere left to hide. They had tried to keep their plans hidden from the kids, but it was impossible to protect them from the growing unease in the house. The fear was palpable, even though they tried to keep it together. Jason had been looking over his shoulder for so long that he had stopped feeling safe anywhere. Every knock on the door, every car that passed by their street, every phone call, it all felt like a threat. But one night, everything changed. It was just after midnight when the phone rang. Jason's heart skipped a beat as he rushed to answer it. "Hello?" "Jason," came the low, menacing voice on the other end. It was Victor Hayes. Jason's blood ran cold. He had expected this, but nothing could have prepared him for the coldness of Hayes's voice. "I knew you'd come for me eventually," Jason said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "But you're not going to win. Not this time." Hayes chuckled darkly. "You really think you're in control here, Jason? You don't even understand the game you're playing. You think you can stop me? You think you can take down an empire with nothing but your little wife's secrets? You're naive." "I'm not afraid of you," Jason spat. "You've already taken enough from her. You're not going to take me, too." Hayes's laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence. "You think I care about you, Jason? No, this is about Ava. You're just collateral damage in the grand scheme of things. If you want her alive, you'll do exactly what I say. Otherwise, well. I'm sure you can imagine what will happen. Jason's grip tightened on the phone as his mind raced. He couldn't let Hayes scare him. He couldn't let Ava down again. But the fear in her eyes, the desperation in her voice when she had told him about her past, it all came rushing back. I'll do whatever it takes to protect her, Jason said, his voice firm, resolute. You don't scare me. Hayes was silent for a moment. Good. Then we'll see who's really in control. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Jason stood there, staring at the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. Ava was in danger. He couldn't let her face this alone. They had to end this, once and for all. The next morning, Jason and Ava sat in the kitchen, the weight of the night's conversation hanging between them. Ava looked exhausted, her face pale, the dark circles under her eyes deeper than ever. She hadn't slept. Neither of them had. We can't run anymore, Jason said, breaking the silence. Victor won't stop until he gets what he wants. But we can't let him win. We have to fight. Ava nodded, her eyes full of both fear and determination. I've tried to outrun him my whole life. I thought I could start fresh with you, but I was wrong. He's never going to let me go. He'll never let us go. Jason took her hand, squeezing it tightly. We're not running this time. We're going to face him. Together. But Ava shook her head. You don't understand. If we go after him, if we make a move, we're both dead. You have no idea what he's capable of. I don't care what he's capable of, Jason said, his voice fierce. I won't let him tear us apart. Not now, not ever. Ava looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and admiration. I'm scared, Jason. I'm so scared. But I'm with you. Whatever happens, I'm with you. Jason nodded. Then it's time we end this. We don't have any other choice. Later that day, they put their plan into action. Jason had reached out to the people who might help them take down Hayes, private investigators, former associates of Hayes who had turned against him, and even a few law enforcement contacts who owed him favors. They all knew the danger involved, but they all understood that the stakes were too high to ignore. Jason, Ava, and their small team of allies gathered at a safe house, a place far removed from their normal lives. The air was thick with tension as everyone prepared for what was to come. Jason's hands were shaking, but his resolve was stronger than ever. He wasn't going to let Victor Hayes take anything else from him, not Ava, not their future, and certainly not their children. We go in fast, Jason instructed the group. We don't give Hayes a chance to retaliate. We'll hit him where it hurts, his finances, his operations. We take down his empire, piece by piece. Ava stood beside him, her face pale but determined. Are we really going to do this? Are we really going to take him down? Jason met her eyes. Yes. We are. This ends today. Hours later, they were in the heart of Hayes's operation, moving swiftly through the dark corridors of a nondescript building that housed some of his most valuable assets. Jason's heart raced in his chest, the adrenaline pushing him forward. They moved quickly, silently, as they infiltrated the compound. Jason could feel his pulse pounding in his ears, his senses heightened. The stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. You think you can take me down, Jason? Jason froze, his heart leaping into his throat. He turned, and there stood Victor Hayes, his cold eyes gleaming in the dim light. He had been waiting for them, watching, anticipating their every move. I've been expecting you, Hayes said, his voice low and mocking. But it doesn't matter. You'll never win. You're out of your depth. Jason took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "It's over, Hayes. Your empire is done." Hayes's smile was cold, calculating. "We'll see about that." In that moment, Jason knew that the fight wasn't just about him or Ava. It was about everything they had built together, the family they had fought for, the love they had shared, and the life they had tried so hard to protect. But it was also about something deeper. About standing up against evil, no matter how insurmountable the odds seemed. In the next few moments, everything would change. The confrontation that followed was a blur of movement, gunshots, shouts, and the chaos of a fight for survival. Jason felt the weight of the decision in his hands, the responsibility of protecting those he loved. He could hear Ava's voice in the distance, calling out to him, urging him to stay focused. And then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. Victor Hayes was taken down, his empire crumbling in the wake of their actions. The law enforcement and their allies swooped in, ensuring that Hayes could never hurt anyone again. In the aftermath, as they sat together in the safe house, Jason and Ava finally found a moment of peace. "We did it," Ava whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. Jason looked at her, his heart full of emotion. "We did it. Together." As they drove away from the chaos, Jason realized that the true battle hadn't been against Victor Hayes, it had been against fear, doubt, and the past that had held them both captive for so long. And now, for the first time in years, they were free.